You ever been in that place where you're praying and praying, fasting even, and nothing seems to be moving? You're doing all the right things. You're going to church. You're reading scripture. Maybe you're serving, and yet silence. Let me tell you something that might shake you. God is not ignoring you. He's not blind to your pain, but his timing, his timing is not your timing. That's the part that will make you cry. Not because you're sad, but because when it finally happens, when the door finally opens, when the healing comes, the breakthrough shows up, you'll look back and realize why it had to take so long. And that realization, that's what breaks you. That's what brings the tears. You see, we live in a culture that thrives on instant gratification, instant answers. Swipe, scroll, click, now. And we bring that same microwave mindset into our relationship with God. But God doesn't operate on Wi-Fi speed. He operates on purpose. He's not interested in giving you what you want when you want it. He's preparing you because what you're praying for, what you're believing for, might be too big for the version of you today. And that's not an insult, that's love. Sometimes delay is not denial. It's development. God is not just preparing the thing for you, he's preparing you for the thing. But the process hurts. Let's be real, it's confusing. Sometimes you want to scream at the ceiling, "Where are you?" Sometimes you want to quit praying. You want to stop hoping, because hope deferred makes the heart sick, doesn't it? But what if I told you you're closer than you think? What if I told you the delay you're cursing right now is the very evidence that God is still writing the story, not ending it? Because when God is silent, he's not absent. He's strategic. And you better believe the enemy is whispering lies in that silence. You've been forgotten. You're not enough. Nothing's changing. But that's just noise. Because God speaks the loudest through his timing. There's something powerful about being able to say, "I don't understand, but I trust you." That kind of faith moves mountains, not because the words are magical, but because God responds to trust. Think about Abraham. Promised a child, but years passed. Years of waiting, years of wondering. And when the promise finally came, it wasn't just a son, it was Isaac, a name that means laughter. Because that's what God does. He takes your mourning and turns it into laughter, not always on your timeline, but always on time. And when he shows up, it'll make you cry, because you'll see how every closed door, every delay, every not yet was him loving you enough to wait. Think about that. Sometimes love looks like waiting. Sometimes protection feels like disappointment. Because if God gave it to you too soon, it could crush you. It could become an idol. It could distract you from the very one who gave it. So he waits, and he watches, and he molds, until you're not just ready to receive, but ready to handle the blessing with wisdom. And let me be honest, some of you are in a season where everything feels like it's falling apart, but what if it's actually falling into place? What if the breaking is the making? What if God's silence is actually him working behind the scenes in ways you can't see yet, strategically aligning things, shifting people, rearranging situations, preparing the perfect moment? And when that moment comes, you'll cry, not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming gratitude, because you'll know deep down that only God could have written this. So hold on. Don't despise the waiting room. It's where your strength is being renewed, where your character is being tested, where your faith is being stretched. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. And if you can just endure a little longer, if you can keep trusting, keep walking, keep worshiping through the tears, there's a day coming when it'll all make sense, and your only response will be, "God, I didn't understand then, but I see it now. I wouldn't trade your timing for anything." Because your timing is perfect, and it was worth every second of the wait. Have you ever looked back at a moment in your life and thought, if that had happened when I first asked for it, I wouldn't have been ready? That's what God sees before you ever do. He sees the version of you today, and the version of you after the fire, after the storm, after the waiting. And he loves you too much to rush the process. That's why sometimes he lets doors close. Not because he's cruel, but because he's kind enough to protect you from premature acts. There's something about God's timing that can't be taught in a classroom. It has to be lived. It has to be endured. It has to break you a little. Because faith isn't built when everything is going right. Faith is forged in the silence, in the unanswered prayers, in the nights when you lay there asking, God, do you even hear me? And still, you show up. Still, you pray. Still, you believe. That kind of faith is rare. That kind of faith moves heaven. And maybe you've been clinging to a promise for years. Maybe you've watched others around you get their blessing, get their breakthrough, and you're left clapping for them with tears in your eyes, wondering, when is it my turn? I hear you. I've been there. It hurt. It feels unfair. But I promise you this, God sees you. Not the version of you everyone claps for, but the one who worships with a broken heart, who stays faithful when it makes no sense, who keeps planting seeds when there's no harvest in sight. And do you want to know something powerful? God's not just keeping track of your tears, He's storing them. Every tear you've cried in private, every moment you've felt like giving up, it's not wasted, it's seed. And when God's timing collides with your obedience, there will be a harvest so overwhelming, it'll break you down in the best way. You'll cry, not because you're broken, but because you'll be overwhelmed by how perfectly He orchestrated every step, even the painful one. Sometimes the silence is mercy. Sometimes the delay is grace. Because God knows what you can't see yet. He sees the traps, the distractions, the counterfeits, and He's not just working to bring you a blessing, He's working to make sure that blessing doesn't destroy you. That's why His timing is holy. That's why you can't manipulate it, can't rush it, can't force it. You can only surrender to it. And let's be honest, surrender is hard, especially when you're watching others post the life you've been praying for, especially when you feel like you're doing everything right and still getting overlooked. But listen to me, God doesn't do favoritism, He does timing. And when it's your time, nothing can stop it. Not your past, not your mistakes, not even you. Sometimes we look at delay as punishment. But what if it's actually preparation? What if God is using this time to refine your heart, to build your endurance, to teach you how to stand strong so that when the blessing finally comes, you don't worship the blessing, you worship the one who gave it. Because let's be honest, if God gave us what we asked for too soon, we might fall in love with the gift more than the giver. And God loves you too much to let that happen. So He waits and He works and He watches how you respond in the waiting. Not to punish you, but to shape you. And while you're crying, while you're wondering if any of this even matters, God is building something inside you that can't be shaken. He's giving you roots, and people with roots don't get blown over when the winds come. People with roots carry the weight of the promise when it arrives. Think about Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, thrown in a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, forgotten in prison. Years went by, years of injustice, years of wondering, why me? And yet, when the timing was right, he was lifted out of the pit into the palace. And in one moment, everything changed. Not because Joseph forced it, but because he trusted through the process. And when it happened, I bet Joseph cried. Not just because he was finally free, but because he could now see what God was doing the whole time. The pit wasn't punishment, it was preparation. The prison wasn't a delay, it was development. And when he finally stood in the palace, he didn't look at his brothers with bitterness. He looked at them with eyes of grace and said, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." That's what happens when you live by God's timing. You stop trying to prove yourself. You stop fighting to control the outcome. You start resting in the truth that if God promised it, then nothing can stop it. Not time, not people, not even the enemy, because God's word doesn't return void. Maybe that's what you need to hear today. God hasn't forgotten. He hasn't changed His mind. He's not late. He's just building something worth crying over when it arrives. And the best part, when that moment comes, when the phone call happens, when the door opens, when the healing takes place, when the dream finally becomes reality, it's not just going to bless you. It's going to bless others. Because God doesn't just give you a testimony to keep for yourself. He gives it to you so you can show someone else that he still moves, that he still heals, that he still makes a way where there is no way. And you'll cry, not just because of what you received, but because of how deeply personal it will feel. Like God wrote it specifically for you. Like he remembered every detail, every prayer, every sacrifice, every sleepless night. And when it all comes together, you'll say through your tears, only God could have done this. So if you're tired, if you're frustrated, if you're about to give up, don't. Not now. Not when you're this close. Keep praying. Keep showing up. Keep believing. Because the God who started the work will finish it. And when it comes, it'll make you cry in the best possible way. There's a kind of breakthrough that doesn't just bless your life. It rewrites your entire story. And that's what God's timing does. It doesn't just answer the prayer. It reveals why every delay, every detour, every moment of waiting was necessary. You see, God isn't interested in quick fixes. He's interested in lasting transformation. And the kind of change he brings doesn't come through shortcuts. It comes through surrender. Some of you have been carrying silent battles, private pain, things no one else even knows about. You've been crying in your car, smiling in front of people while you're falling apart inside, and yet, here you are, still standing, still believing, and you don't even realize it, but that's faith. Not loud, not always confident, but consistent. And that consistency, that quiet obedience, it moves heaven more than you. Because God isn't just watching what you do in public, he's watching how you respond in the secret place. What you say when no one's listening, how you pray when no one's watching, how you hold on to hope when everything around you tells you to give up. And that's where promises are born. Not in the spotlight, but in the struggle. Not on the mountaintop, but in the valley. That's where God's timing starts to take shape. And maybe you feel forgotten right now. Maybe you feel like your name is at the bottom of the list. But let me remind you, God doesn't operate on your schedule. And he doesn't promote based on popularity. He promotes based on purpose. And when it's your moment, when the divine timing of God aligns with your season of preparation, there is no force in hell that can stop what's coming. You won't need to chase it, beg for it, force it. It will find you. And when it does, you'll cry, because you'll realize it wasn't random. It wasn't late. It wasn't luck. It was right. Right for your heart. Right for your capacity. Right for your character. And when it arrives, it won't just feel good. It'll feel holy. You'll walk into rooms you never thought you belonged in, and you'll know deep down, I didn't get here by networking, or striving, or hustling. I got here because God opened a door no man could shut. And those tears, they'll come from a place of reverence, of awe, of realizing just how intentional God has been with your life. Every no, every closed door, every painful ending was really a divine redirection. You thought it was rejection, but it was protection. You thought it was a failure, but it was the foundation. You thought it was over, but God was just getting started. That's how he works. He doesn't just restore what you lost. He gives you something better. Not just better in the world's eyes, but better for your soul. Because sometimes we don't even know what we need until we've been through the fire. The waiting seasons have a way of purifying your desires, of stripping away the shallow prayers, of making you desperate. Not just for what God can give, but for who he is. And when you reach that place where he's enough, even without the answer, that's when you're ready. Not because you earned it, but because your heart can finally hold it. There's a depth that only comes from being broken. There's a wisdom that only comes from waiting. And there's a kind of joy that only makes sense on the other side of sorrow. That's why when it happens, when God finally says, now, you won't just celebrate, you'll weep, because you'll know what it cost you. The prayers, the sleepless nights, the faith it took to keep showing up when nothing made sense. And in that moment, it will all feel worth it. You'll say things like, I didn't understand it then, but now I see why it had to happen that way. You'll start connecting the dots. You'll realize how God was using people, conversations, setbacks, even your own failures, to prepare you for this exact moment. It won't feel random. It will feel orchestrated. Because it was. That's what God does. He writes stories that no man could ever write. And when he moves, It's not subtle. It's not small. It's undeniable. So much so that even the people who doubted you, the ones who walked away, the ones who said you were crazy for believing, even they will have to admit, only God could have done that. And that's the point. It was never about you getting the credit. It was about Him getting the glory. So yes, God's timing will make you cry, but not because it hurt, because it healed. Not because it broke you, but because it built you. Not because it took so long, but because it came right on time. And when it happens, don't apologize for your tears. Let them fall. Let them speak. Let them testify to the goodness of a God who saw you, remembered you, and came through for you in a way only He could. And let your story be proof that waiting on God is never wasted, that obedience is never in vain, that silence is not the absence of God, it's the space where trust is built. And when you feel like giving up, when you're tired of hoping, remind yourself of this. The same God who made oceans part, who brought dead things back to life, who turned slaves into kings, is the same God who is writing your story, and He's not done. So breathe, trust, hold on a little longer, because your moment is coming, your chapter is turning, your prayer is about to be answered, and when it happens, it's going to be more beautiful than you imagined. Not because you finally got what you wanted, but because you'll finally understand why the wait was worth it. And when you stand in that answered prayer, with tears running down your face, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget the nights you almost gave up. Don't forget the faith it took to keep believing. Because those moments weren't wasted, they were the soil your miracle grew in. God's timing is about to make you cry. Sometimes, when you pray and believe for something with all your heart and it still doesn't happen, it's easy to assume that God is saying no. It feels like rejection. It feels like the heavens are silent, and in that silence, doubt starts to whisper. Maybe I'm not worthy. Maybe God doesn't care. Maybe He changed His mind. But what if the truth is deeper than that? What if what you're calling rejection is actually preparation? What we often fail to understand is that God's timing isn't just about giving us what we ask for. It's about shaping us into the kind of people who can carry what we're asking for. There's a difference between being handed a gift and being able to handle it. Some things you're praying for right now are heavy. Callings, relationships, opportunities, influence, and in God's mercy, He waits. Not because He's punishing you, but because He loves you too much to let you step into something you're not ready for. When you plant a seed, it doesn't grow overnight. You water it. You nurture it. You protect it from harsh weather. The same principle applies to your life. Just because you don't see the fruit yet doesn't mean the seed isn't growing. God is doing more in your waiting season than you can imagine. He's stretching your patience, refining your motives, burning away the pride and immaturity that would otherwise sabotage your blessing. You're not being overlooked. You're being developed. Every closed door, every delayed answer, every moment where nothing seems to be moving is a tool in His hands. He's building your endurance so you don't collapse when the weight of the promise finally lands on your shoulders. Because blessing without preparation can be a burden. And God's goal is not just to bless you for a moment, it's to establish you for a lifetime. Think about it. How many people have received something too soon and lost it just as fast? A title they couldn't handle, a platform that fed their ego instead of their purpose, a relationship that turned into an idol. We ask for things with pure intentions, but God sees beyond the moment. He sees the future. He sees the responsibility that comes with the answer. And if He delays it, it's not because He's saying no. He's saying not yet. I'm still working. I'm still shaping you. In those seasons where everything feels quiet, where it seems like everyone else is getting ahead, it's tempting to force it, to open your own doors, to settle for a counterfeit version of the thing you've been waiting for. But the cost of forcing something outside of God's timing is always greater than the price of patience. Because what you get without God's blessing, you have to maintain without His grace. And that will wear you down. So maybe today, instead of asking, why haven't you answered yet? The better question is, what are you building in me? That shift in perspective changes everything. It changes how you see the waiting. It turns your frustration into formation. It reminds you that the wait is not a waste. It's holy ground. It's where your roots go deep. It's where your faith is forged. It's where God gets you ready for what's coming. And when it finally comes, and it will, you won't just thank him for the blessing. You'll thank him for the wait. Because you'll realize that the delay wasn't a punishment. It was protection. It was preparation. And it was